Joining us now is Caseen Gaines, educator, author, and a whole lot more. Welcome to the show, Caseen. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice to meet you. So you have a lot of titles under your name. So how do you identify yourself as what?
I think I identify myself as a storyteller in a strange sort of way. I am a teacher. I teach high school English, but I think that a lot of teaching is really about um, helping students understand stories, telling stories. And so I see a pretty strong connection between my writing work and my work in the classroom.
Speaking of writing, you've done so many things. I'm looking at this, and you've been published by Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, the AV Club. You've been the author of several nonfiction books, including "We Don't Need Roads," which sounds really cool. The making of the Back to the Future trilogy. Who doesn't love that? The comb in the back of your pocket. I'm like, I love Back to the Future. I remember the first time I saw it to Caseen, I walked out of the theater, and it was the first time I had seen a movie that made me look at the world differently.
Mm.
Like, I actually went outside and I was like, didn't know what day it was, what time it was. It had transported me. So that sounds like fun.
Wow.
You've done a Christmas story behind the scenes of the holiday classic, which was cool. And then inside Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse, you've won a silver medal at the 1912, at the 2012 Independent Publishers Book Awards. So many things. And now look at this big book. Look at your baby. This
Oh
is
my
your
gosh, my big
baby.
baby. I love
It
it
is
so
a bit,
much.
it's
I
like
this
at
is
least,
it's not my first book, but it's the one that I'm the most proud of, honestly, because I love theater and I think it's such an important story. Not to say that like writing about Back to the Future and A Christmas Story, those are all wonderful, great pop culture moments, but this was one that I felt was a really important book to do and different for me, and I can't believe it's the size that it ended up being. I mean, this is like a big scary thing, but it's a good read, I hope. So I hope,
it,
people aren't intimidated by the size of it.
no, you know what I like about it too, Kasim, is that you broke it down into, I guess, concise chapters, right? And the titles of your chapters are really intriguing. And you have photos in here. So it's a good read and it's a thoughtful read. Like chapter 7, The Black Bohemians, 1921. You go through it. It's called When Broadway Was Black, and it is the triumphant story of the all black musical that changed the world. And you go through here and this is great. I don't think it's ever been done before, Caseen. I think that's the other cool thing is that you somehow this beautiful piece of work fell into your journey, right? And so
Yeah.
you were able to bring the story forth. And the amount of research that you had to have done must have been intense. Tell us about that.
It was very intense, actually. I started researching this book probably about 3 years before I wrote a single word for it, and that process was interesting because I went through all of this archival material in different libraries across the United States. I went through old newspapers. I have some amazing horror stories of finding a great newspaper clipping from the early 1920s, and a piece of it had been broken off and I couldn't read like the rest of the sentence, and I'm going, no, no. Personal correspondence, unpublished diaries from some of the main characters, and it's funny because for me it was like a fun journey. I knew that I was telling this story of this show called Shuffle Along, this really influential, groundbreaking show from 1921, but also while it was a lot of work to research, I just was so excited about uncovering all of this forgotten history. And so it was work, but it was fun work.
Well, I was just recently at the Ryman, and there was a whole family of gospel singers that also performed, shows, and they had costumes, and they did all the storytelling, very poignant. And I love that about your book too. It talks about the fact that here it was an all black cast and the risks that they had to take to even
Yeah.
put this together in the first place. And you have it all here. So that must have been interesting when you were able to kind of weave the tapestry together, put that back in place and to
Yeah.
respectfully tell the story.
Yeah, and I think it was important for me too to make sure that the people that were putting the show together came across as being real people. I think sometimes when you think about history, you know certain people and you know what they did, but you forget that, like you said, there are real risks. I mean, we do this all the day in our regular lives, right? We have to decide if we're going to make choice A or choice B. We have to decide what we're going to spend our money on, what we're going to spend our time on, if we're going to keep our job or if we're going to, move to a new state. And they were making all of those decisions with kind of the brass ring being this Broadway show that they were putting up. And I think it's important for everyone to sort of remember this is obviously when you're talking about 1921, this is before television, this is before the internet, this is before even original cast recordings. The way to sort of make it to the top, if you were someone who performed, was Broadway. That was the top. So they reached for the top, and through an amazingly triumphant journey, they succeeded.
Well, I also see that, giving credit where credit is due, it says that Sissy and Blake are credited with kickstarting the Harlem Renaissance and bringing jazz to the mainstream.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
You know,
And in fact, Langston Hughes actually was the one who gave them that honor. Langston Hughes, great, writer and an icon of the Harlem Renaissance, said that it was this show, Shuffle Along, and the creators that brought not only Black people to Harlem from around the country, but also brought a lot of white people to Black artistry through this show.
So Caseen, talking about that history and that renaissance, if you will, of jazz, I like jazz. I love it. Jazz hands. I mean, I grew up in St. Louis, which is the home to the blues, right? So here this story is about when Broadway was black and Shuffle Along. What surprised you in your research that you found and you uncovered that you wanted the world to know?
I think what surprised me was just how popular this show was. And I say that because, sometimes people say, well, how is it possible that you found all this material on a show from 100 years ago? And the way that I sort of describe it is, imagine that someone 100 years from now was going to write a book on Hamilton. Once they found the right place to look, they would have all of this information. They would find articles, they would find videos, they would find interviews. It would all just be there waiting for them. And, this show was so significant in so many ways. It was Josephine Baker's first professional stage credit. It was a show that Paul Robeson was a part of. The song I'm Just Wild About Harry, if you're familiar with that song, it's from this
Yes.
musical. And yet so many people don't know of the musical itself, even though they know of all of its sort of the fruit from its tree. So I think that was something that even caught me by surprise, was just seeing how it was written about and how celebrated it was, not just in America, but truly around the world. Even though it never played outside of North America, it was still written about in Europe as being, the sensation of America. It was quite a journey.
I love that. And do you yourself find yourself like singing some of the songs? Like, do you go into your classroom and just kind of like, you're singing in your head?
I do all the time, and in fact, in May I am producing a concert version of Shuffle Along at 54 Below in Manhattan, and so I have had the music in my head for years, and it's still in my head even now as I get ready for this concert that we're putting together.
That's a fabulous venue. Will you please invite me? I would love to attend. I sincerely would
Absolutely.
just enjoy that so much. I would love to see you work. That would be phenomenal. So thank you,
Absolutely. We have a
Caseen.
number of great Broadway performers that are on board for it. So, yes, you will definitely get an invite. That is my promise.
Yay! I will be there. Okay, so when Broadway was black, Caseen Gaines, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this. This was fun. Thank you so much. Be well. Bye.